Welcome to another Hand Drink Solo Wine info video where we spend a lot of our time rolling our eyes at wine myths and bad science. Decanting is one particular topic within the wine world that seems to attract and harbor bad science more often than a vegan widow adopts one-eyed alley dogs. Traditional wine wisdom tells us that decanting softens harsh tannins. Decanting smooths out all bitterness. Decanting unlocks hidden aromas, although that last one, it kind of does. But a new study from Mourvèdre seems to drop-kick most of those assertions straight into the spittoon. For starters, in their study that involved loads of blind tasting, wines that were decanted appeared to be more bitter and have harsher, more astringent tannins than wines that were poured straight from the bottle. And what's more, even the shape of the decanter seemed to make a difference. The classic Cabernet-shaped decanter, for example, seemed to amplify bitterness in wine more than any other shape. So according to Mourvèdre, if you want to give your middle-aged red wines their best shot at glory, then it's probably best to pour it straight from the bottle. And the reason that we're talking about middle-aged red wines is because today's hand drink solo wine of the day is the Waterkloof Mourvèdre 2019, made by winemaker Nadia Barnard. And because this has had at least 6 years in bottle at the time of this recording, it's a chance for us to explore those delicious but elusive tertiary / time-induced flavor notes without having to go through all that rigmarole of home cellaring and developing character traits like self-restraint and practicing delayed gratification, which is apparently things that boomers used back in the Middle Ages. Or perhaps it was an old wooden ship from the Civil War era. But rather than speculate about all that, I want us to get straight into the glass so that we can actually taste what Nadia has prepared for us and what a little bit of time in the bottle really can do. So, when we give this guy a sniff, well, for starters, there's this question of what is an old wine supposed to taste like? Because there are those who will say, well, if it's stinky and leather and salty and savory and tastes like stewed prunes, then that's the joy of aging wine. But I don't think that's the truth. In fact, I'd like to propose that an aged wine that has aged well and that has thrived rather than just survived in the bottle should possess this combination of delightful fresh fruit still, but also that lovely kind of dusty tertiary character in order to add these layers. And that's what we get here. So you get that dusty element of cedar wood that makes you feel fancy, like those china cups in your nana's corner cabinet. But there's also fresher elements of black cherry. There's also kind of red cherry candy and even a little bit of a sherbety element like raspberry sherbet. And then layered over that, there's also a delightful hint of lavender, but it's not fresh lavender, it's more intense. It's kind of like a dried lavender. And again, often when you smell dried roses or dried lavender or dried violets, that is a tertiary element. And it's quite intuitive in that sense, in the way that a wine ages and the notes change is not unlike the way perhaps the smell of roses changes as you leave them in a dish in your guest toilet. When we give this guy a sip, well, it's Mourvèdre, all right, but it's Mourvèdre in a tailored suit, because wine textbooks will tell us that Mourvèdre is wild and it's a little bit rugged and you can have a meaty and smoky aromas and the tannins can be a little bit brash. But this particular wine is a really rather polished affair. I mean, the tannins really are there, but they're kind of delightful plum skin or cherry skin fruit tannins rather than sandpaper boxing gloves punching you in the gums. And then earlier we talked about how there should be that mix of fresh and dried, and there really is this touch of fresh black maraschino cherry, which blends beautifully with some of those dried notes, and also a kind of licorice root / herbal fennel element, which is absolutely splendid. And all of this is tasted without a decanter anywhere in sight. I've waited until after you've tasted the wine before I tell you about Waterkloof Estate. And that is because Waterkloof Estate seem to possess a few character traits that unfairly have negative connotations within the mind of the consumer. For starters, they are fully certified organic, which you'd think would be a good thing, especially in an age of a decaying environment where regenerative farming is more important than ever, and a mindset of sustainability really is quite central to consumers. But unfortunately, a choice experiment on Italian wine consumers showed that on average, people don't prefer organic wine, or at the very best, they ignore the seal, but they certainly don't find it to increase the chances of them selecting that particular wine. So I didn't want to tell you that they were organic certified just in case it adversely affected your reaction to what's actually in the bottle. But Waterkloof are not just organic certified. They are in fact incredibly progressive and leaders in the area of regenerative farming, even on a global scale. So South Africa has estates like Reyneke, Hartenberg, and Waterkloof that really are global leaders, especially in the area of animal husbandry and using animals in the vineyards. Waterkloof use Nguni cattle in their vineyards, not only to help control cover crop by eating it, but then after they've eaten that cover crop, by laying down layers of fertilizer and urine, which really improve soil quality, and also, as a byproduct, lay those cover crop seeds back onto the soil, turning the whole vineyard into a kind of self-sustaining cover crop cycle, which then leads to a huge increase in biomass, which is a good thing for the soil. They've also recently released a range of wines called Beerskamp, or Cattle Camp, and this is all about communicating the crazy work that they're doing with cattle in the vineyards. But these wines are not sold in stores, they're only available from the estate. So it's best that you visit Waterkloof in the Helderberg so that you can see the wild work that they're doing, not only with regenerative farming, but also with the animals on the estate. And if things like regenerative farming and caring for the environment and loving your fellow man do absolutely nothing for you, or at best make you yawn, then at least you should visit the estate in order to see their incredible Cellar in the Sky, which has won numerous international design awards for its breathtaking architecture and design. So that's all we have time for today, but I have left links to 2 videos, one of which goes into great detail over how and why cattle in your vineyard is actually a good thing for both soil and vines, and the other video focuses on Mourvèdre in a slightly broader sense.